Hey guys, Porowl here, and today I'm going to be showcasing all of the add-ons, macros, items, and enchants that I use for farming dungeons in Transmog. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the add-ons that I use, and the first add-on that I'd like to talk about is Bagnon. Bagnon is an add-on that turns all of your bags into one giant bag, which you can customize in many different ways by hitting the gear icon at the top right. Here you'll find all sorts of ways to customize your bag columns, spacing between items in your bags, and much more. You can also view what other characters have in their bags, which can be useful, like if you think you left an item on another character, you can check their inventory right from Bagnon instead of having to log between characters. You can also search for items in your bags using the magnifying glass. Lastly, you can view how much gold you have across your characters by scrolling your mouse over the gold coin here. Bagnon works with your inventory, guild banks, personal banks, and more, but just be sure to visit a bank on every character for Bagnon to collect data on what kind of items that you own. Next we have Karni's Crap Filter. Karni's Crap Filter allows you to blacklist items you don't want in your bags. This means if you don't want low-level mana potions, or food, or stuff like that, you can open up Karni's Crap Filter and add it to your blacklist. Blacklisting an item will automatically delete it when you loot it. So this is useful if you farm dungeons or raids for Transmog, and you don't want that same pair of useless gloves entering your bags. Karni's Crap Filter has built-in options to blacklist items, but I find it runs a little more smooth when you manually drag the items into the blacklist. If you farm a lot of Transmog, or you just don't like trash in your bags, then Karni's Crap Filter is a great add-on to have. Next I'd like to talk about Easy Delete. Easy Delete is very simple. Just drag an item from your bags and drop it onto the screen, and Easy Delete will automatically type delete for you, so all you have to do is hit OK. A very simple, but useful add-on. The next add-on I'd like to talk about is called Gathermate2. Gathermate2 is an add-on that will keep track of the locations of herbs, mines, fishing pools, gas clouds, archaeology finds, and treasures, and will display them on your minimap and world map. As you can see here, all of the treasures around me are marked on the world map, so all I have to do is fly over there and see if it's there or not. You'll need the add-on Gathermate2 Data, which is pre-filled with every location for herbs, mines, fishing pools, and stuff like that, so you don't have to discover the locations yourself. If you like to mine, herb, or just collect treasures, then I highly suggest picking up Gathermate2. The next add-on I'd like to talk about is called Rarity. Rarity is an add-on that will keep track of how many attempts you've gone for something rare. For example, every time you kill Yogg-Saron in Aldar for the Mimron's head mount, it'll keep track and show your attempts in the chat box in WoW. Rarity will also take a screenshot whenever a rare mount, pet, or toy is found and collected. Rarity isn't needed, but it is a nice add-on to have while farming. The next add-on I'd like to talk about is called I Mog It. I Mog It will add tooltips to the items in your bags that will show if you collected an appearance or not. Here's a list of all the symbols and what they mean. This add-on can be really useful if you farm a lot of Transmog, but aren't too sure if you own the appearance or not. The next add-on I'd like to talk about is called NPC Scan. NPC Scan is an add-on that will alert you with an on-screen display and sound when a rare mob is nearby. Rare mobs tend to drop rare items in some cases, so it's a good add-on to have if you're interested in killing rare mobs or hunting them down to tame them, such as Spirit Beasts for hunters. Next up we have TradeSkillMaster, or TSM for short. TSM is an add-on that caters to both casual and experienced gold makers. TSM is great for auctioning, crafting, mailing, disenchanting, and anything to do with trade materials. TSM can take some time setting up, but once you have it set up, auctioning, disenchanting gear, mailing items, and crafting will be made much easier. For a full guide on how to set up TSM, check out Sharkin's amazing video in the description below to help you get started. Next up we have LootAppraiser. LootAppraiser is an add-on that determines an item's value when looted based on a pricing source that you select. So for example, if you're running a raid and an item drops, it'll pop up on your screen with an item's icon and a bell noise alerting you. Here's an example of LootAppraiser. Oh, dude, Skullflame Shield, no way. Last run. Dude. I cannot believe that. What? That's some early luck. As you can see, it's a very useful add-on to have, even if you aren't into farming, because you never would have thought a green pair of shoulders sells for 20,000 gold. You will need the TradeSkillMaster add-on for LootAppraiser to function properly. This add-on is one of the most important add-ons in Transmog farming due to the fact it can calculate roughly how much an item is worth. Next up we have Selljunk. Selljunk is an add-on that will add a button to any vendor, and all you have to do is hit it, and all your junk will be automatically sold from your bags. You can add more stuff to the list by typing /selljunk, or use the Selljunk macro that I made in the description below. The last add-on I'd like to talk about is called Wardrobe Tools. Wardrobe Tools allows you to quickly mail over gear that you farmed up to the character with the appropriate armor type. As you can see here, when I go to the mailbox, there's a little arrow next to the Send T-Mog button. When you click it, this little menu will pop up, and all you have to do is type in who you'd like to receive which armor type. So I use my Mage, Rogue, Shaman, and Warrior, and whenever I have gear in my bags that I don't own the appearance for, I just hit the Send T-Mog button at the mailbox, and everything will get sent at once to the characters I selected to receive them. Wardrobe Tools also allows you to quickly learn all the appearances by typing /AC and scrolling your mouse wheel over the item icon that pops up. Once you're done collecting all the appearances, just scroll your mouse one more time, and everything you had previously equipped will be put back onto your body. This add-on is extremely useful in collecting Transmog, and I highly recommend it to anyone that collects gear and appearances. Okay, so next up we have items. The first item I'd like to talk about is called Bear Tartare. Bear Tartare is a food buff that gives you a 70% speed boost for 6 seconds after killing an enemy, which can be very useful in dungeons, raids, or just open world farming. You can craft Bear Tartare with the cooking skill, and it requires 5 fatty bear steaks and 1 river onion, which is sold by cooking vendors in Delaran, or you can just buy them on the auction house. The next item I'd like to talk about is called Skystep Potion. Skystep Potion requires you to be level 100, and will give you 150% speed boost for 8 seconds. I find Skystep Potion to be very useful in dungeons like Blackrock Depths, and raids like Icecrown Citadel when farming for pets, or going for the mount. Skystep Potion only has a 1-minute cooldown, so you can use it quite often depending on what you're farming. Skystep Potion can be made with alchemy, and requires 4 Starlight Rose, and 1 Ancient Rejuvenation Potion to craft. You can also just buy it on the auction house. The next item I'd like to talk about is called Jeweled Lockpick. Jeweled Lockpick is an item that can open up any treasure chest or lockbox in the game, and only requires 1 piece of Sandgrite to craft. Another great thing about Jeweled Lockpicks is you only need level 1 jewel crafting to use it. The downside is you need to have level 720 jewel crafting to craft them. I use my Mage to craft them, and send them over to my Demon Hunter when I farm dungeons or raids. Having level 1 jewel crafting also allows me to drop jewel crafting as a profession, and pick up mining for when I farm places like Blackrock Depths, or Molten Core Trash Farm for Dark Iron Ore, and swap back to jewel crafting when I farm dungeons with chests in them. Blacksmithing and engineering offer ghostly skeleton keys, and elemental Seaforium charge, but they require higher levels to use, and cost more to craft. The next item I'd like to talk about is called Lootarang. Lootarang allows you to AoE loot all mobs around you for up to 40 yards. Lootarang is very useful when doing dungeons, raids, or open world farming, and would suggest it to anybody with at least 125 engineering. Lootarang requires level 125 engineering to use, and level 490 to craft, so if you're an engineer, this item can be very useful to you. It's important to note that Lootarang is a toy, so it will get added to your toy collection, and will not take up bag space. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is macros. You can find all of these macros in the description below. The first 2 macros I'd like to talk about are my join and leave group macros. These macros are extremely useful when you're farming dungeons, as it allows you to get teleported out of the dungeon. Once you learn the dungeon well enough, you can get teleported out around the same time you killed the last boss. Here's an example. Oh guys, there we go. Rich purple silk shirt pattern. It's worth like 200k. It didn't go off on my LootAppraiser, but I already know it's worth 200k. I just looked the other day. Let's take a look. Dude, actually, it's worth 500k on my server. Let's go. It actually went up like a ton. I checked like 2 weeks ago. 500k for that pattern, boys. I recommend these macros to anybody that likes to farm dungeons and raids. The next macro I'd like to talk about is a simple targeting macro. Depending on what dungeon you're farming, you can use this macro to kill a critter for extra speed. For example, in Mana Tombs, I use this macro to kill the roaches at the end of the dungeon for extra speed. This macro is all about adding some extra speed in your runs when there's no mobs left to kill. The next macro I'd like to talk about is the Lootarang macro. I use this macro to easily use the Lootarang toy I talked about earlier in the video. You will have to put in a skill that fits your class if you aren't a demon hunter, as the macro uses the demon bite skill used by demon hunters. And the last macro I use is a macro to open up the Selljunk add-on that I talked about earlier in the video. I recommend these macros to anybody that farms dungeons and raids, and I hope you guys find them as useful as I do. The next thing I'd like to talk about is enchants. Here's a list of all the enchants I use and what they do. I use the Mastery enchants on my Demon Hunter, as Mastery for Demon Hunters gives you run speed. These enchants add a small but noticeable difference in your run speed, and are great for saving time overall. The next thing I'd like to talk about is gear. For those who didn't know, all the crafted Legion legendaries introduce some sort of speed boost to your character. The male legendary gives you a buff that stacks up to 5 times, and gives you a 25% run speed boost whenever you kill enemies. This boost will last a minute, and will keep refreshing as long as you're killing enemies. This item also gives you the ability to fly outdoors as long as you're killing enemies, and is also useful for farming places like Zul'Gurub, as it will turn you into a ground mount the entire dungeon. There's a leather version of this item called the Sentinel's Eternal Refuge, which comes with 3 gem slots that I filled with Mastery gems that will give your Demon Hunter some run speed, as Mastery gives Demon Hunters run speed. If you're a plate user, then you may find Rethu's Incessant Courage to be useful to you. This belt gives a potential 15% movement speed buff, but the downside is you only get the buff when no enemies are within 8 yards of you, so be sure that they're useful to you in the places that you farm before purchasing this belt. The last piece of gear I'd like to talk about is called Solumbra, the Knight's Dichotomy. This item is for cloth users only, and will give you a 10% movement speed buff whenever an enemy is around. This can be very useful in dungeons, raids, and open world farming, and I recommend it to anyone that's looking for a little extra speed. All of these items work in Battle for Azeroth, but with Battle for Azeroth right around the corner, it's up to you to decide if they're worth investing in. I'll be keeping a mage at level 110, as well as a demon hunter at level 101 specifically for farming, so for me, these items will be useful after Battle for Azeroth gets released. One important thing to note is Battle for Azeroth will introduce a stat squish, which means all of your stats will be lower than they are now. This affects gear with speed on it, and demon hunters like me who rely on Mastery for run speed. Here's the difference in my stats on my demon hunter on live, compared to the Battle for Azeroth beta. As you can see, they went down quite a bit, but the good news is the effect from the legendary boot still works, so I don't have to worry about losing all my run speed. A lot of people ask me what the best classes are for doing dungeons and raids and open world farming. It can be highly dependent on what you're doing, but almost any class is good somewhere. The most popular farming classes are monks, druids, and demon hunters for the insane amounts of speed and utility that they bring, but I prefer to play mages and demon hunters due to the insane amounts of mobility, speed, and flexibility that these classes bring to the table. I have several videos on my channel showcasing the potential of these two classes, so check those out to get an idea on how good mage and demon hunters can be. In my opinion, any class can farm well if you know what you're doing, but there's no denying that some classes are better in certain situations. Alright guys, that's it for now. Hopefully you found something useful in this video. If you ever have any questions, step over at twitch.tv/Porowl, where I'll usually be doing dungeons, raids, or just open world farming. You can also follow me on Twitter at Porowl, with zeros instead of O's for things like when I'm going live, future video posts, and stuff like that. Thank you for watching. See you next time.